Welcome to the next episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. On today's episode, we have Chief David Pruitt. Chief currently holds the position of the Chief of Emergency Management and Innovations for the City of Hillsboro, Texas. He's been there for 23 years and is clearly passionate about the fire service. He was gracious enough to give me a couple of hours of his time right before teaching at the LIFT conference. And although he really enjoys talking about acquired structures and training, he's also a master of rabbit holes, and we got sidetracked pretty often. I'm not sure we ever fully talked about what I thought we would talk about. Regardless, I love his passion. Side note, you will see me look to the left pretty often. I'm making sure my PC and the audio mixer didn't crash. Skippy wasn't able to make it to LIFT to run the boards, so I was nervous I would lose it. Thank you for listening. All right, are we ready to roll?
We are ready.
We're ready to roll. All right, so welcome to the next episode of the Dragon's Den podcast. Today, I'm Chris Scott, and then we have with us today Chief David Pruitt, who insists on me calling him David, which is, it is what it is. I'm gonna keep calling him Chief anyway. I hope he understands.
Absolutely.
So the way that we got Chief, we're out here at LIFT. We're out here at LIFT in Louisiana, and Chief is going to be teaching a couple of classes here this afternoon. So we are very thankful for the time that he's given us because he was actually prepping slides. So he stopped prepping slides to be able to come in here. So I definitely appreciate it. But the way that I ran into you, Chief, was that I was trying to get an acquired structure program started. Hang tight. I can hear this. It's going to bother me to no end. There we go. I was trying to get somewhat of an acquired structure program started up in my city. I didn't want to burn anything, but I just wanted to figure out who SOGs, SOPs in order to kind of formalize a process. So I threw it out on the internet. Some people had sent me some ways, but I don't know what group I had posted it in, but you reached out and you're like, hey man, send me a message. I'm gonna give you a call. So I said, okay. I honestly, Chief, didn't know who you were. I didn't know what you did. It makes sense now that you called me, knowing what you do with Live Fire Acquired. But you called me, and I was assuming that you would give me just a little bit of advice, maybe be a short 5-10 minute conversation. And it was about an hour and 15 minutes. And I remember it was a great conversation, but I remember thinking okay, Chief, we're not on a podcast. This isn't being recorded, but what struck me was that you had the same energy and passion. It wasn't when you went on a podcast, when you were talking, like you had been on the scrap, I'd seen you. You weren't, I saw you later. I didn't know who you were at the time, but I watched your stuff later. I was like, man, the energy that he's bringing is not just for show, whether it's a one-on-one conversation or on the podcast. His passion for the fire service is there. So you were officially the first guest to be outside of Louisiana. Everyone else said Louisiana, so we're starting to stretch our boundaries a little bit. I saw you come in. We had talked previously, and I said, well, let me reach out and see if he'd be interested. And like I said, we're here. So you do have a bio. It was a short one. We asked everybody for bio and notes, and you said, hey, look, I got 23 years with Hillsboro. Here's what I do. Got a wife, a couple kids, and I love talking about fire. That's the notes. And I was like, all right, I guess we'll go from there. I already previously have a conversation with you. You weren't lying. You like talking about fire.
I do.
So Chief, once again, thank you for your time. Welcome in. We'll start it out by having you tell us your journey into the fire service, how that came about, and then we'll go down whatever rabbit hole you want to go down.
Absolutely. So I'm second generation fireman. My dad put in 38 years in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, ran his first call in June of 71, June of 71. And I came along in 72. And so his journey, when he was a teenager, a Fort Worth fireman waved at him. And he was like, that's got to be the coolest job there is. And, open cab truck, just and returning back to wherever they're in Fort Worth. And,
sure.
And he ends up getting in funeral home ambulance service, in the early, in 71, got into one of the first paramedic classes in the state, EMT, and progressed into paid position, which moved us from Southeast Fort Worth about 20 minutes down the road to a little city, Mansfield, Texas. and he was like the second paid guy there. And as they were transitioning combination, getting into the ambulance business themselves, they needed these people called paramedics to do that. And so he was one of the first 5 guys hired there as they transitioned to combination department. And so to say he was eat up with it would be such an understatement, because we had scanners, back then, and and he had one in his truck, and we would go, if he was off duty, we would go chase Fort Worth fire trucks just all the time. And just Station 17 was they had to drive past the end of our street, and so he would have me up on his shoulders, and we're talking long nose 65-foot open cab, mid-mount ladders, open cab, American LaFrance pumpers coming past the end of the street. And it was what it was. When you heard that gas motor, then Detroit diesel, that Q2 spin up, we're at the window. I wanted that almost as much as I wanted to eat my next meal. Hey, let's go visit a fire station. Let's do this. And so, not just my love for it, my passion for it, and watching people work well was from my infancy. And so when we moved to Mansfield, I was about 9, 10 years old when we moved there. At that time, I don't want to say it was your iconic just combination department, but it had the expectation, and so much of this stuff shaped who I am now in the fire service, because there was expectations. In a city of 6,000-7,000 people, the fire department was a part of everything. Every parade, every new opening, anytime people went places, they were one of the bigger meeting rooms outside of churches. So there was, civic groups there. There was always a need to be at the fire station. My mom was a part of the women's auxiliary. So, and then I had an old pair of my dad's bunker gear. They had to buy parts of their own gear and stuff, and it was set at the end of my bed. And if they would get a call, he would throw the pager into me, because he was going obviously where there was radios, and I'd be able to listen to the calls. And I'm like, oh my gosh, and up there for every telethon, the MDA stuff. There's pictures of me in the station helping count the quarters, and as they get stuff ready.
So it was essentially in your dad was ate up almost immediately.
Yeah.
And then that's all you ever knew.
It was my DNA.
In your DNA.
And
got it.
And we share so much stuff. And I talk about this. He was also a musician. He's still a bagpiper now. He started playing the bagpipes about, I'm gonna say 25 years ago. And there was guys in Arlington that were like, hang on, you play? And guys that knew him from the 60s and 70s, like, no, he's a very good musician. My grandmother was an opera singer and a pianist, and my mother, played instruments. And so we had this parallel passion of music also, not only instrument playing, but singing. And so when it came time to graduate, I was in music throughout, choir and band. When it came time to graduate high school, okay, I'm either going to go into the Navy or I'm going to become a fireman. Mm-hmm. And it's not luck, because your steps are ordered. And it's easier now, almost 53 years later, to go, okay, wow, this is exactly where I was supposed to be. And when my dad watches this, he doesn't remember this. He lied to me. Okay, I'm going to go be a fireman. About to turn 18, bam, be a fireman. He's like, oh, you got to be 19 in Texas. Didn't even think to check. Didn't even think to look at the rules, whatever. Got to wait till I'm 19. My choir director had recommended, hey, come over and audition for this scholarship. Some of the guys I sang with in high school. And I was like, whatever. Well, my complacency and just whatever, I like to sing, I like to play instruments, ended up getting a full scholarship to study music at Dallas Baptist University. Several years later, kind of Forrest Gumped it. They kept paying, I kept going. Actually got my degree in music education. which led me into, okay, what are the next steps? Okay, we'll go teach school someplace. And so I actually taught school for several years, and that'll play in here in a little bit. Every time an engine or a truck, every time I heard that Q2, every time I'm around my dad and going visiting him at the station, when you're not doing what you're programmed to do and passionate about, there's a hole. When you look at one of the biggest relationship killers in our profession, we usually get aligned with people that aren't doing what they really want to be doing. And the fact that our passion is so fulfilled on such a regular basis, that puts us immediately at odds with anybody that's got to go to work.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there passionate about music, passionate about education, but man, there's just a hole the size of a Q2 in my chest. And I'm like, I've got to fill this.
Exactly the size
Exactly.
of a Q2.
And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
and so I look at it one day, and it's like, you know what, I got to try this. I'm like 28 years old. I don't feel past my prime in any way, shape, or form. I've got to know.
Can I hold you there for a second?
Yeah.
There was no opportunities to volunteer, because with it being in your DNA, you went all these years. My thought process is, you went all these years. Did you not live in a rural spot where you could have attempted it, even if at such an early age?
I probably could have, and I definitely saw it, but it was in my ignorance, all in or all out, and I didn't know how to blend them. And I'd had a friend, that I don't want to say cast negative connotations, but like they didn't, anytime we were all around each other, and my parents, they didn't really care for that lifestyle they saw. And I'm like, okay, hang on, this is all I know, and all my dad's friends are firemen, or firemen or musicians.
So earlier on, before you went to college, for you mentally, it was a split. It was either going to be one or the other, and you went college.
Well,
you went college.
I never factored in the college music stuff. I knew I wanted to entertain and be a performer, and that made sense. Okay, I could do this. My dad was able to do certain things, and buddies of his were in bands. Okay, I can do this. The college route never really even entered my mind, because I was kind of dead set on going into the Navy as well. All my dad's uncles were World War II veterans, Vietnam, all that stuff. And when the recruiter came by our high school, and very proudly right now, this is the first time I've been on camera, I've just lost like 30 pounds.
You look good. I wasn't going to say anything, but you look good.
So when I was, they bring by all these people to the school. We took our ASVAB test, whatever, all these things. I was 6 feet tall, 113 pounds. Yeah. And the recruiter's like, he's sitting there, I was underweight. I was still like 20 pounds underweight for like the smallest height requirement. It was a classic, go eat a sandwich, do this, get back with us. And hadn't really ever applied myself through high school. My grades were not stellar at all. I've always had a difficulty with algebra. Okay. If you start at step 1 and go to step 10, or go to step 10 and go to step 1, I'm pretty good at that. Give me the formula, I can figure it out. Going from step 2 to step 6, and there's no resolution. Why would we even do this? I was the classic kid. It's a triangle because it's a triangle. No, there's all these theorems. I'm like, why are you trying to prove something we already know?
Right. I didn't mean to send you down that rabbit hole, Chief. But there was a split.
Yeah, absolutely.
You didn't go down firefighting. You're teaching. So now you're back you're 28 years old.
Yep.
And now you're
back at square one.
Yeah.
And it was nice because now scared to death. Okay, I'm leaving a career.
Yeah, full on career.
And as soon as I walked with support, walked into EMT school, because I started EMT school first, and because I'd seen that roadmap. I'd talked with people a little bit, visiting my dad's station, and in Texas especially, if you can get your paramedic, you're pretty much in places, and so went through EMT school, enjoyed it. It has purpose. It didn't fill that hole, but it had purpose, and still to this day has purpose. Was able to get into fire academy. Went to Tarrant County College, a very good program in the state, and was the last class. If you go now, they've got all these buildings, and we were a classroom and a 5-story drill tower, and it tacked onto the college, and we had to park the engine down at the aviation hangar. A part of the aviation maintenance program let us have some space. Now it's like 27 buildings. It's a massive facility.
It's complex, yeah.
And was the last class to come out of the old building. And every day there, and I can't stress this to people coming in these days, it was an instant repair of that hole, I felt, even just being in academy, and was so neat. And the guys that were in my class, many of them are still on the job. 23 years later, they're still going and still pursuing their stuff. We've had one member pass away. And then we had a couple of guys in the class that were probably never going to be firemen.
It happens everywhere.
Yeah, not sure why they were even there, a couple of them. But some of the most brilliant people that could easily be sitting here right now, the differences they make in their agencies, and the differences that they made in me by being them. And because one of your first families as a career firefighter is in that training group, and there's still some of them that I reach out to on a regular basis, and we've joked about, okay, when we reach our 20, where's everybody at? When David was his name, when he passed away, we all kind of reached out to each other, because that was that was a hit to our class. We hadn't lost anybody in our class. And so I had gotten hired on at a small department north of Fort Worth, and it was everything I thought I wanted it to be. And when I counsel people and consult and challenge people, do your homework. The old adage, find a fire job, then find the fire job you want. If you're lucky enough that it's the first one, great, fantastic. Great fire department. We were one of the first groups they had ever hired outside of their volunteer combination, people they knew. And I am so thankful for this now. They had a mold of and an expectation of what they wanted us to be, that we didn't fit.
Okay.
And as I progressed, we realized that roughly at the same time that we were not the fit for each other. I think they knew it long before I knew it, but ended up leaving there, which led into a great opportunity. I got on an ambulance in Arlington, Texas, which is not, it's not Boston, it's not FDNY, but
they're reasonably big.
2 months I was there, 16, 17 total shifts in between when I left and got hired in Hillsboro. We ran just under 400 calls on my ambulance alone.
On 17 shifts?
Yeah, and we were not the busy ambulance. And
oh my goodness.
So the volume. And that's one of the things when I started looking at what was next. And like every fireman, I put out 1 million applications. Whoever's hiring is where I want to go. And I tested a bunch of places, and there was a city that scored well, any place that didn't ask me algebra questions, I scored pretty good. You know, how algebra deals with firefighting, I don't know, but they were going to put me all the way back through paramedic school, which I was about to be finished with. I had like a month and a half left in paramedic school, and put me all the way back through fire school so I could learn their way.
Sure.
And I was like, okay, I get it. Still a good buddy of mine, Captain Penny, calls me, says, hey, we like you. I was like, okay. And by the way, not only we like you, we've got a deal this Saturday, one of our, raffles, one of our events. And Hillsboro was still a combination department when I got hired on there. Man, we want to meet your family. We wanted this. And I'm like, okay.
It's a weird question when you're hiring on. We'll meet your family. You don't get that one.
And so there was a spot that I had shoved this Q2 in and mended that void, missing being a firefighter. And then there was this portion that actually not a lot of people get to have. And I find this so rare these days in our profession. They were family. And I was like, wow, I didn't realize I was missing that until that was filled. Because there's this void area and this gray and this ether that you don't realize you're not in. And man, when they wrap their arms around me, we're going to fit you. We're going to have to chisel away some pieces. We're going to have to mold some things. It can't be certain things.
Sure.
But we want you, and we want to be a part of you being a part of us. And that's a different message in a lot of places. You will fit us or you won't fit. And even still today, there's places out there, big, small, and in between, that no, you will fit our mold, period. Mm-hmm. And there's guys that wildly succeed at that. So it's not a flawed process.
It's just a different process.
It's just a different process. And so I immediately was hearkened back, to those early days with my dad. And it was family. A little bitty town, and Hillsboro's roughly the same size. It's been about 10,000 people for forever. And we're experiencing a boom right now. We're going to, in a meeting not too long ago, ask them, why are we talking about 15,000? Let's talk about 25 and 30. Because overnight, Mansfield, our little 6, 7, 8,000 person city is now like 70 something thousand people. And just like overnight, Dallas, Fort Worth, and then you got Arlington, Irving, Grand Prairie, or your mid-size, 15 station department type sizes, 15 to 20. Man, it just sucked in everything around it. And so it blends, basically all the way from Denton down to Waxahachie. Mm-hmm. I mean, it just blends all together. And then from McKinney over to Weatherford, basically, it's blendable.
So you come on to Hillsboro.
Yep.
You work your way through the ranks in a pretty standard firefighter, driver, captain, kind of that. No, you had a different path. Okay. Because we didn't tell people this at the beginning, but your current, the position you currently hold is?
I am over emergency management and innovations.
Okay.
And that's recent. That's October.
Sure. That's okay. Well, yeah. So what kind of path did you take up in Hillsboro?
So you come in my group, when we got hired, we made 6 people a day. We were running a 3 platoon shift, ABC, and we had 2 stations open. We could drift down that rabbit way. It was built for political reasons, the second station, and then they built the first station because they were mad about the second station, something like that, a million years ago. And so we were splitting 6 people, 4 downtown, 2 out at Station 2. Somebody's always off, so there's usually 3 and 2. We were still running an ambulance, and so we were staffing 2 ambulances, and we were just kind of making it work. If there was a fire, whatever district the fire was in, they took their fire apparatus and we brought the ambulance, or vice versa.
Sure.
And so got lucky it was in my late 20s, and the couple of us that got hired, we had all come from other fire departments, so we had a little bit of experience. Now, when I started, the captain drove the rig no matter what. If he was there and it was a fire, he drove. He would start pumping and run command from the pump, and we'd do whatever we were going to do on the fire ground. And so the driving experience wasn't really there unless he was off. And then they were, okay, you got to drive. And I'm like, okay, we worked my way around a city I didn't grow up in. The standard problems that causes.
Sure.
At my 3-year point, we simply had a lieutenant's test. Standard place. I mean, a small place. If nobody's dying, you're probably not promoting, and you'll get your 2.5% COLA raise or whatever every couple of years. But I went ahead and tested. Did well. A buddy of mine who recently retired got the spot that time. Good to work with and for. And my 4th year, and here was the neat and the bad thing where we're at. Promotion didn't really make a difference other than your collar brass and your paycheck. And because one of my first shifts as a lieutenant, first couple of months, we allowed, and we still allow, anybody can pick up an overtime shift. Now, I had spent, basically a decade or more watching my dad in Arlington, in like a mid-sized big city department. There's rules, and then,
Sure.
battalion chief's not going to ride backwards, the occasional Christmas, hey, Chris, you can go home to the family. I'll take your spot, and
Yeah.
we see those pictures on the stuff, and kudos to those guys. Very commendable. But on a normal day at work, a lieutenant was not going to ride backwards, in Hillsboro, whoever showed up got into the seats they were. And so one of my first couple of months as lieutenant, we had a captain pick up overtime. Our captain was there, so we had 2 captains, and then we had a lieutenant pick up overtime. And my counterpart was there. So there was 2 captains, 2 lieutenants, and me as a lieutenant. Something they're going,
Yeah.
what do y'all want for breakfast? What do you want? I'll be cleaning the toilet. I'm like, oh yeah, Nick.
All officers all the way across the board.
Exactly. And I'm like, wow, and on a normal day, we had a captain, 2 lieutenants, and 3 firefighters if everybody showed up. So we had like 1-to-1 supervision, which is a whole other reason that went down. But in that moment, and one of the things I liked about being there, period, is there was work to do. Now the captain could not take a call if he wanted. He was fairly well insulated, and I learned the value of insulating yourself. And if I have to be on the line for any reason, I try to make sure there's a paramedic or 2 buffering me from that. But I also learned the value very early on that every role in this agency is a combatant role.
Mm-hmm.
We very frequently, and we're still the only paid fire department in our county. Whitney now has a couple of on-call positions, and we went to work with 6 people. There might be 1 or 2 cops that from the volunteer days, and they could get up and work the turret, or they'd help you address the hydrant, whatever.
You weren't going to have an A-side command, a B-side command, a C-side command.
Well, and if you did, it was just you.
Yeah.
You
didn't have all the people.
Exactly. And then so Whitney at that time, if they were in their station, we're talking over 15 minutes, 18 to 20 minute response.
That's out
It was
there.
either burned out or burned down or
Sure.
burned, and so you had to know how to do your job. And it comes up in one of the presentations I'm doing here. Our physical agility test was the job. And especially, and I've been there total time, I'm about 22 and a half years there. I can't tell you the number of times by myself response because everybody's doing whatever else they're supposed to be doing in the agency or running calls. Okay, let me stretch my own line. Let me go back to the pump panel and charge it. Okay, it's got to be a hole in the roof. Okay, we've
Get an
got to
air
go
pack on.
search. Yeah, okay, we've got to go get a hydrant, and so in all of its perspective and perception, and I mentioned that in one of these today also. Your perspective can be clear and nobody else can perceive it. You know, and there's people out there when they hear what we do, they're like, hang on. I was at a class recently in the last couple of years in South Carolina, and we were in uneven groups. It happens. We had 5 or 7, whatever the number was. I was the odd man out.
Sure.
And I was like, hey, I'll just force this door and go in and search. Young man, I felt good. He called me young man. He's probably 8 months older than me, but so you can't go in a burning building by yourself. I'm like, routinely.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
I don't have a driver. You know, when I was over the division, it's me and my buggy. That's it. And I'm sitting there thinking about Danny Dwyer, and I'm all these guys. I'm like, man, I'm routinely in by myself. And that leads down all other pathways of whatever.
I'll say real quick, but
Yeah.
my last 2 debriefs, I didn't post one of them, but it was a guy that made a solo, almost a solo grab
Nice.
out of a department that's nearby us. The debrief before that was another solo search, solo grab out of another rural department. So it is not ideal. We do not want to send fire. We do not want to put one man in a burning building by himself. That is not ideal. But unfortunately, due to circumstances, it does. It happens when it has to happen. But anyway,
I would challenge that assertion. You know, coming from Texas, we're still reeling from the events of Uvalde and the changes. And we're not talking ripple, we're talking tsunami. I mean, this was not a pebble cast in the pond. Our expectation should be to perform. Our duty to act. We use these words in our profession. And I jokingly say this, and if somebody ever does it and wins, fantastic. If every one of the tasks at my physical agility, when you start signing my paycheck, those are instantly 2-person jobs, I would like that second person at my physical. I probably would have done a hell of a lot better on a few of them if you would have been helping me with hose or helping me with, that's a 24-foot ladder. You can't do that by yourself. Well, no, let me show you. Here's how you bang a 35. Here's how you, now 2.5, okay, maybe not. Past 35, maybe not. But you're telling me within, let's be generous, within 7 minutes, I'm expected to throw a ladder, pull some hose, carry some heavy stuff, drag a victim, which, by the way, is probably the easiest way to drag them now. I mean, when am I ever going to drag a victim 75 feet? You know, unless it's some outside event. Okay, great, I now know how to do it. Pull some supply line. You're going to give me 7 minutes to do that, but instantly when the bells drop and we place, Nick Martin said this the other day, I love it, don't park the truck, place the truck.
yeah.
We place the truck or the engine in the appropriate position. Hang on, we've got to stop everything now because these are 2-person tasks. And somehow something I did successfully. I was always about a 3.5, 345 guy doing physicals. Somehow this is now some exorbitant process. And we've got to line everything up. When's the last physical agility you went to that even anybody other than your proctor was at? Because we don't encourage that sort of team family building from the get-go, but we expect you to be a team and a family when you get here.
Yeah.
It's all about messaging. Mm-hmm. One of the biggest things we changed, and you've seen me on podcasts, I tear up every once in a while. This one gets me still. One of the biggest things we changed, and I hope we never change it back in our department, we encourage everybody that shows up to the physical agility to be there as a champion for the other person. And we go so far as it's still timed. If there's a tie, whatever, we need times. It's a completion. And completion is so important to us that might require help. Now, if we have to help you, if I have to take the weight off of you as an individual, do we need to see your individual effort? Yes, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
But the number of people that are being disserved by our fire academies these days, this very well might be the first time this individual's had to do this on their own. And what worse expectation, they want to now do this as a career and as a paycheck. And we're sitting there just taking notes. Well, sorry, you dropped the nozzle. That's a failure point. Sorry, you hit the ladder on the door frame. You got to turn back around and go back to the truck and hang it back on the thing and then start over. Well, we don't know why you didn't make it in the time limit. Well, I know exactly why, because you forgot how much you love this job. And you've added all these barriers that I haven't seen a single one exist in 23 years of my own career, 52 of being in it with my dad's career juxtaposed either side of it. What I was blessed to see was people that said, go do the job you're supposed to do, because it's their expectation. And I was like, wow. And we've been able to hire so many great people. Once we changed our focus, we kept that moldable around them. Mm-hmm. We're going to mold around you. You will become the image that we want. Are we winning any calendar contest? No. There's 11,000 New York firemen. They find 12 to make a calendar. Okay. The rest of the world looks like this. This is what's coming at 3 a.m. But when you invest in people, you get a return on that investment that's people-based. Mm-hmm. When you look at metrics and you look at cost, and those things have to be there. As an administrator for over 10 years, those things are there. And there's a time and a place for that. Mm-hmm. Very seldom is that when the truck goes into park. Mm. It's a people job.
Yes.
So what I look for in people, I need people that can introduce themselves properly. Hey, I'm Dave. I work for this department. I'm here to help you. What seems to be going on today? Because I still bump into people that they just can't introduce themselves. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We're going to talk about that this afternoon. We're going to actually do an exercise. Hey, just say who you are. And people stumble through that. They don't stumble through it with the good-looking girl at the grocery store or at the bar or whatever. They can tell us exactly what we want to do. Really, the 5th grade class at the elementary school is what's going to tear you up? You don't know how to tell them what we do?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Doesn't make sense.
Right.
But anyway, I've drifted down a long intro rabbit there.
That's quite the rabbit hole. So let me deflect you back.
Yes.
Let's bring you back on course. Let's get you're moving through your career.
Yep.
You make chief, but let's back up. Let's go completely over to how you landed in the training. So you're out teaching at all these conferences. That doesn't happen by accident. So at what point in your journey do you start teaching and then you drift off into the conference level? Well, how did that end up happening?
The chief approached me one day, probably it was very early on. I mean, it may have been only a year or so into working in Hillsboro. He knew I was an educator. And he asked me, had I done Saving Our Own?
Wait, what?
The Saving Our Own class. And
Saving Our Own, got it. Okay, that Texas accent got me right there. That was a thick one.
Sorry, yeah.
You're right, Chief. Go ahead.
I was like, yeah, we had it, X, Y, and Z. And Academy is like, hey, put something together. We need to take everybody through it. I'm like, okay, cool. And it went well, and I loved it. I mean, I absolutely loved the dialogue. I loved the case histories of it, and the original stuff, and my fire academy, there were several individuals there, and then the first department I was at, there were several at the Lake Worth fire. where we lost 3 brothers.
Mm-hmm.
And so they brought in their grief, because it was a very recent fire when I was in academy. It was only a year or two old. My dad had known one of the guys. And so I was like, okay, wow, this is, for me, one of the first applicable classes ignorantly on how do we keep each other safe?
Mm-hmm.
And it started going into that mental mindset of those things. Year two or three, I forget which. I could probably find a picture. I've got a picture of the house. Hill County does this fire school that we're in for all the volunteers and people from neighboring counties. Everybody comes, and we weren't better than anybody else. We were just the only paid department. So we always kind of took on some of the bigger classes, extrication or, command class or whatever. They had gotten a house in the city just north of us. And we used to rotate in the different cities around the county, and would meet at their school or whatever. And my captain and the chief at the time were like, hey, do us a lesson plan so we can burn this house. I was like, okay, I can do that. Now, I'll tell you, it's the worst lesson plan ever. Even the lesson plan wasn't bad. And I've steered away from what I did that first burn for the next 20 years of my pathway. I had all these multi-company operations happening at once. We were running an engine, somebody teaching engine stuff, command stuff. We're doing search, we're doing attack, we're doing vent, all these things, all the while trying not to burn down the house next to it. It's about 10-foot setback. And when I walked away from that with so many nuggets, I was like, wow, okay. Pick one thing and do one thing. If it's a hose class, do a hose class. If it's hose, now these days, especially fixed facility, hose protecting search, great, do whatever.
Right.
Trying to tie everything off. 1403 was in its absolute infancy at that point. Didn't even really know what that was. But then early on, so conferences, Dallas-Fort Worth is such a unique area. We were getting stuff there. Firehouse was there once or twice, Fire Rescue International. So there was things close. We could go to a conference, EMS conference down in Austin. Would get to go down there occasionally. But early on, probably about year 3-ish, got to go to the National Fire Academy for the first time.
Yeah, great place.
Great place. And I was sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is... and I still think it is the all-star game of what we do. And it was, we didn't have bad people that I worked with. We had people at different levels of exercising their passion, and not all of them were passionate about the fire service. But they were passionate. Man, I got in that first class in Emmitsburg, and I'm like, okay, every single person here wants to be the best at their department for whatever role they're playing. I'm like, okay, I get that. And I want that. And I was fortunate to go 4 or 5 times. When my youngest was born in 2007, being gone a couple of weeks at a time, it was crazy. I was like, okay, I've got to slow that part down. So, fast forward through, we were getting houses. The city, like a lot of cities our size, and no one's ever told me I'm wrong on this, so I'll keep saying it. After what I've always imagined, after World War II, everybody gets shipped off to all these places, and they like San Diego, they like New Jersey, Hawaii. So we had all these individuals kind of leave the area that had built these houses that we had, in the teens and the 20s, and then as people started aging and people started, we're isolated. We're an hour south of Dallas-Fort Worth. We're still about 30 minutes north of Waco. So unless you were a farmer, worked in one of the little factories we had, or in education, or worked in one of the banks, you had to leave to go find work. And so we were left with just a bunch of structures that as they aged, nobody was in anymore. And so we started down the pathway. Anyone we knew we could get, great. We started training in that. And we did the county school, neighboring departments would come over. I got asked, we were in MSA at the time, our air packs. The Scott rep, Brady Mollenauer, called me and I was doing some product demos for people. Casco and a few other places. Hey, let's come down. We'll let you see this. Hey, we'll set some stuff on fire. Come to our party. We'll show off your whatever. And Brady calls me and says, "Hey, do you have a house by chance?" I'm like, "Yeah, we got more than one. What's exactly?" "Hey, be on this phone call next week." And that phone call was one of the senior people at 3M. They had purchased Scott Safety and the principal photographer that they use. And so the fast version of that, for the past 5-6 years, almost everything you see fire-wise that actually has smoke or fire in it, they filmed in Hillsboro. And so, and the people that knew I could burn and knew that we could do things, one of my young members came in nozzle forward. "Hey, I want to do this nozzle forward class." And I'm like, "I don't even know what you're talking about." and ignorantly.
Yeah,
it's amazing how accustomed you get to ignorance.
Ooh, tell me about it.
And I'm like, "Let me look this up, whatever. How do I not know newfangled stuff that's out there?" And so I click on it and I'm like, "Huh." I said, "How many people want to go?" "I'll tell you what, I'll go." At that point in time, I'm chief of the division. If I say we're going to wear blue, we're wearing blue. If I say it's all gray, it's all gray. I mean, buy-in's great. Don't get me wrong, but it can also weigh you down. Hey, so we ended up getting 2 or 3 of our firefighters and 2 or 3. I didn't mention this at any point. We're a public safety system, so we have individuals throughout the system that carry numerous certifications. So 2 of our patrol firefighters came also, and I went. And I'm sitting there, I'm watching all this stuff. Instantly felt like Fields is the twin my mom always alluded to. "I'm pretty sure you're a twin." Okay. I'm like, man, I get it. My ADD was bouncing about the time that he was switching, from multi-striped Adidas to Mongolian as a second language to this, and, hugging sports. I'm like, I get it. And then when he showed the videos, because what do I have to lose other than another house off my list?
Yeah.
We're sitting here on the grinder. Everybody's doing their stuff. I'm not the most bendy person on earth on a great day. I'm sitting there trying to do my crooked lean and doing all my stuff and throwing water all over the place. And I just approached him. I said, "Hey, I noticed in the videos you had, it's a lot of fixed facility stuff, this and the other." I said, "How often do you get to burn for real?" "Very seldom, or not able to capture the footage all the way, this and the other." I was like, "Well, hey, if you ever want to have the conversation, we've got a couple of houses." Year, whatever later, he and I are on the phone, and 2 trips over the course of 10 total days, we burned 8 houses, did 64 total burns in those 8 houses. And when it burns, we allowed them to get to the state of structure fire. These were not a room and content in the box, fixed facility.
Let it burn in one room, knock it out, reburn in the same room, knock it out. You let it go.
We let it go. And there's pictures out there and stuff. I don't show them to a lot of people because everybody wants to do that. What Aaron brought was the most seasoned pikemen across the nation to this event that he was capturing his footage for. And those guys knew exactly what to do. And it's neat because once again, this what my hole was filled. I was at a state of zen in my life and my career. And when at the class even, and have you had nozzle forward?
No, I've heard I've heard about it, but nozzle forward. Once again, people aren't listening for Chris; they're listening for Chief. But the culture of conferences and especially the Aaron Fields up in the Northwest, just not. They're not really here yet. We'd like them to get down here, but no. I've heard about it. Listened to them talk on multiple podcasts, but the answer is no.
It was one of the first ones. Any of the trainings I had been to outside of my shift, and when I was a B shifter my entire time on the line, we were as tight as could be. And we trained together, we ribbed each other, we loved each other, hated each other, every dynamic you could imagine we had. And when you have that tight knit of your shift and your crew, when you go to other shifts and crews and you visit places or whatever, it's obvious when you don't fit or when you whatever, or when it's not there with them. They're tolerating each other. They're not loving each other.
Absolutely.
And when I saw Aaron's cadre actively jumping in for their own rep. Now, I'd been to classes, like I say, I was not young in my career, let's say 15 plus years into this journey, more than that probably. I'm like, for an instructor to show you something, they were trying to show you. Great, there's the only way we can show you. They did it. I'm not going to say they didn't do whatever skill. They banged the ladder, pulled the hose, dragged the victim, whatever. The working with you on techniques was not there. In let's say the 2000, 2015, and there's some places it's still not there. You can still go to any classes across the nation to where they're going to show you. They're going to say crawl, walk, run. But when as a operator, you scratch below their surface to the depth of their knowledge, very few instructors are able to start sharing their experiences and sharing the different methods and okay, I can see what you're doing there. I can see this. And then they're able to craft you and mold you. Man, Aaron's cadre was, oh my gosh. They were getting a rep because they were still combatants, one, and they were getting a rep because the amount of passion that overflows far exceeds the amount of gallons of water you're going to use in that class. And you use hundreds of thousands of gallons of water in one of these classes. And, okay, I'm hooked. How do I be a part of this? I've been able to go to several other ones of his around the nation, just be a fly on the wall at some of them, just help reload some bundles. And so, long story longer, I started going to a few more things, started getting invited, started having people come. I will not say the name of this organization, but they had put out they needed more instructors for a national level class. I won't even say the class because it may give it away.
Sure.
When they sent me my dismissal or my rejection letter, it was a nice letter, crazy embossed. I mean, I was like, heck yeah, I probably saved it.
Right.
Mr. Pruitt, we feel right now that your influence at the national level is not where we'd want it to be to teach this national level class. I was like, okay. I put an Aaron down as a reference. I put a couple other people that had come to Hillsboro, literally, 8,456, I think is what the sign still says on the population sign. We'd already had Yannick Lanneray from Paris, France. He came, spent 2 days with us burning. Fields brought people from all over the nation. We had all these other people. And I called Aaron. It's like, hey, I didn't get this position. He's like, why? And I told him, he's like, the nation's coming to Hillsboro. And I was like, crap, I never thought about it that way. Yeah, maybe so. Whatever. We're going to keep burning and jamming on and doing our thing. And so I hadn't gone out a lot of places. And when COVID happened, right around there, I'd gotten to go to FDIC, which was phenomenal. A couple of years prior to that, probably 2020 or 2018 or so, 19, gone to FDIC, and was trying to make a few other little conferences here and there, state stuff. I bump into Dave Mellon, and I bump into the work conference, which was in Austin, Lone Star Fools, and had worked with a couple of those guys on a few things. A couple of them had come up and burned, or a few of them were a part of Aaron's cadre, and it's neat because I think every firefighter has a voice. And back to that, sender receiver. Not everybody's willing to receive, and the majority of my stuff is live fire based. And working in acquireds. And that's a pretty taboo subject some places. I've actually shut down instructors. I went to one, once again, won't say this city. This is one of our state fire conferences that we had. And everybody's going around the room. I'm so and so. I work for so and so department, and we got this $43 million concrete build. All these things. I was like, hey, I'm Dave from Hillsboro. I burn real houses. And this dude, I'm surprised he didn't ask me to leave the class. He was that upset that we were burning real stuff. And I'm like, it's all we got. We've put in for all these grants for all these things and whatever. It's what we got to burn in. And fortunately for us, it's almost exactly the houses we're having real fires in. So it's
makes a lot of
kudos,
sense.
It
makes a lot of sense.
And so one thing, I started being asked initially to help do some fire at some of these conferences. Hey, bring your experience building fires to what we got going. Okay, no problem. And from there, there's different levels. And back into the instruction stuff for a second. The instructor 1, 2, 3, and you're an instructor, you're a teacher, you're an educator. Instructors, we got plenty of instructors in the fire service. We got in formal, informal, your mentoring, your stuff like that. We got guys out there that will tell you how to do something, and they can even show you how to do it. What I find to be the difference at that next level of being a teacher is you start adding in your layers of evaluation ability. And I will say a level of tolerance and understanding that there's different ways to get to the objective. And as a teacher or as an instructor, I want you to pass. You either pass or fail, no rhyme or reason. And think about the number of instructors that don't take your failure upon themselves.
Yeah.
Because you're the one who failed, not me. I clearly read the critique, the methodology on how to read it. I can read. How can't you learn? And I'm like, I back that up to, years of college, teaching, curriculum design, all that stuff. I'm like, no, there's more than one way to get here.
Sure.
I simply need you on the roof. I could care less how you get to the roof. But we get lost in the steps to get there. And so at teaching level, can I evaluate you in a way? Can I teach you in different ways? And then here's where it gets personal. Can I take that on myself to make sure I know the different ways? And we see that pop up in a lot of different things, and you see these teachers, I'll call them that at that point, apologizing because they don't know how to do it your way. Well, we don't run red fire trucks. We just run red fire trucks. And I'm like, hang on, the same thing. Ladder's a ladder, right? All we have is alkalite, and you just, hang on. But students just say, okay, let me get through it. Let me stop. Whatever. Give me my piece of paper, please.
Yeah, they kind of check out a little bit.
Exactly, and then check fall fives on the box.
Yeah,
great. It's
move
good.
On. True.
Education man, I don't know. I want to know what you're thinking. The majority of this afternoon, I'm going to ask people what they're thinking at these moments. And it's a rough spot to teach in. I'm after lunch and then before they get to go home, not just go to the bar or the casino or to their whatever. I mean,
exactly. Like I'm
and
leaving after this.
exactly. I mean, so-
Everybody's kind of ready. Like we've been here for 4 days.
Exactly,
Maybe
yeah.
getting beat up on the drill field. You're gonna have a rough.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got a rough spot that
and
you're feeling.
dance monkey. And I'm
Bring the energy, Chief.
exactly. And so with
Anyway.
that. And I want to build those mental pathways and get you to a point as an educator that you can then start those next journeys into those roles underneath. Because education is truly about succession planning.
True.
And are you going to be able to not only repeat, but are you going to be able to have it become? Because when you educate and they want to learn, and I've adopted this recently, and I think it fits. So many challenges out there these days. In fact, Corley's even got one at the end of the scrap now. Challenge the next. What's the vigilante challenge?
I'm glad you watched those because we actually we developed those in the
Absolutely.
in the Discord. And I feel good about that.
Absolutely. And so,
feel good about the vigilante. It wasn't me, but I feel good about the vigilantes.
It's some of the
bringing these
greatest
stuff here.
conversations
Sure.
and greatest voices of all levels. And if you're going to be challenged, be willing to be changed. And there's so many people that want a challenge but don't want the change. And they stay in that they either brush it off. It has to be a physical act at some point, or a mental act, a process. I do not want to accept this.
Sure.
Okay. Don't really understand it for the most part, but I know it's real.
I'm gonna bring you back.
Bring me back.
Yeah, you started the rabbit hole a little bit. So you start teaching
Yep.
the Save Our Own. You start doing the acquired structures. You starting to bounce around to conferences to help out.
Yep.
At what point do you start adopting your own curriculum? You talk Dave Mellon.
Yep.
Did I say that right?
Yeah, Dave Mellon.
And then so at some point you're teaching your own curriculum. And and then you, at some point, I don't know where Live Fire Acquired comes into have we gotten there yet? Or
Yeah, a little bit. Well, so Live Fire Acquired's been there the whole time. It wasn't a name until just a couple of years ago. Okay. And some of it, because some of the individuals, some of the companies that I've burned for their products, I do get compensated. So they needed an avenue. They couldn't just pay Dave. I was like, okay, well, man, can I start doing this? Because I'd gone up in Oklahoma a couple of times, had gone out of Hillsboro a couple of times and did some burns, and I had this happen pretty early on with the firefighter safety and survival stuff. I actually had a guy tell me that because of what the back of my coat said and didn't say, wasn't FDNY, Chicago, Boston, Pensacola, whatever.
Insert big name here, sure.
Thanks, but no thanks. And it made me furious. And because I knew what I was doing.
Yeah, it's tricky because you get some people that maybe, like I work for a considerably bigger department than yours, considerably bigger, but I can promise you that you've seen so much more fire, whether it be an acquired structure or not. You've seen so much more actual fire than I have, that it's out of control. So it's crazy to look at the name on your jacket and go, this guy's irrelevant. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He needs to be from a bigger place. I guarantee you've seen so much more actual fire. So anyway, to your point, go ahead.
Well, and so that started that pathway. and people needed to hang their name on something. And that's honestly, that's one of the reasons I go by Just Dave. And actually the SCBA, I even have a tab for the back of my coat that says Just Dave.
Dave, yeah.
Because people get lost. They get lost in the title. They get lost in the name. They get lost in the collar brass. And I mentioned this in a class. I took the trainer not too long ago, beginning of December, and we were going over how to do instructions of this class. I said, hey, don't have anybody give their title. And if at all possible, if you can control them coming in, have them come in plain clothes. And there were some people in this room, I mean, we had one guy had like 5 master's degrees and 2 doctorates. I mean, and some of them were firemen, but this was a broad, it was an emergency management class. So there's people from every background you can imagine. And when they asked me, like, hang on, I'm a doctor. I was like, that's cool. I said, but everybody's going to ask you a doctor question and expect you to know doctor answers. And we're talking about NIMS 300. Mm-hmm. Literally, that's what the class was, a NIMS 300 class. I'm like, we're going to go over how just to answer the call to go to this disaster has nothing to do with your 3 PhDs. You're an air marshal, you're this, you're that. Ramirez just got through teaching. You're a human before you're an operator. And we ascribe this stuff. So when I'm on the fire ground and when I'm actually operating, I try to be as blendable as possible. And it's something one of my first captains, we very seldom wore any rank. And what he believed is that they came to you, if you walk past him to the other person, hopefully he had given you every bit of knowledge and tools to answer and fix whatever problem that individual came to you. So it very early on, not that I'm not proud of it, not that it didn't mean things, but that wasn't who I was. It needed to be about substance, not the shiny. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I got to, the own curriculum stuff, honestly born out of wanting to be able to be more places. Mm-hmm. Because I was at that point, I was starting to go to conferences. The people who knew who I was because of the burning I did, great, no problem. Have those conversations. People are pushing people into me. Hey, go ask that guy. He'll help you with whatever. Burning wise. And then you get to that point, or you can. Well, it's not that I didn't know the other things. And in my experience level, and it's funny you mentioned the depth I have of firefighting. And when I say this is not any bit of arrogance or conceit, is vast. Because in a department with the staffing level we have, what's rehab? What's, a buddy of mine, great friend of mine, his probationary year in Dallas made 100 working fires.
Good God.
Splitting shifts on the ambulance.
That's unbelievable.
And so we're talking like 50, 60, 70 shifts, 100 working fires. He drives by the station one day. He's like, hey, stop in. I hugged him. Still a good friend. It's like, hey, man, tell my young guys and gals. And they're just jaws on the floor. And because in a city that runs 20, 30 fires a year, how can you have 100 in 1 year just on your day?
That's great. Just for perspective right here, decent sized department, we're about 285 total, 250 uniform. I worked in the busiest side of town last year. I recently got bumped out, busiest side of town. So you ready for perspective?
Yep.
13 stations, 13 operational stations, 14 total. We made 4 first-in fires. Yeah. In the roughest side of town, the hottest spot, 4 first. Maybe 4 total, but I want to say it was 4 first-in. So I'm just giving you some perspective. Like, hey, we're not a big city. We're a mid-sized city, and yet we were nowhere in the ballpark of amount of fire, dude.
Exactly.
It's crazy. So
And that
anyway, go
started
ahead.
blowing my mind too, because I'll tell people, yeah, we run 20, 25 good hose on the ground fires. Only paid department of the county, so we're going to go left to right or center, neighboring cities. Well, I asked my buddy, I was like, hey, tell him how many times you made it to a second bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And that number went from 100 down to like the teens. And
Yeah, because they can put 40 bodies on.
oh,
it.
yeah. And that's exactly what he said. He's like, if you're not first engine, first truck, you're waiting.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you get another bottle, maybe an apartment, a warehouse, he's a very large department, twice, and most of this because my stupidity, not command's. I've made it to 8 twice in the past 23 years, and numerous times bottle 3 and 4, and it's. And not dissing any of our neighbors. They bring who they can bring, but okay, they brought 2 volunteers in a grass rig and they're wearing, tech gen or something, nothing structural, and there's still structural stuff to do.
That you didn't have the option. There were no
The
other
option wasn't
options. Sure.
And so the depth, I can't tell you how many holes I've cut by myself. Why? Because the 2 Cap's running the pump and command. Those 2 guys are going in with a hose and doing a search. Hey, Pruitt, get on the roof, cut a hole.
Got it.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Hang on, this is exactly like the physical agility. We're going to throw a ladder, climb up on top of some stuff, break some things. Fantastic. Okay, yeah. You're still asking me to do the job you hired me to do. Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Okay, no problem. And so all that to say, that started bleeding over. And then I put this 52 years, and I tie this into the statement I'm going to make at the end of what I'll say. Student of the game, though, the whole time. Even when I wasn't in the game, my dad and I's conversations, firefighting, he's always done model railroading,
mm-hmm.
and fishing.
Mm-hmm.
Was constantly talking about what they were doing at work, and he would come home as a kid and talk about return on investment.
Fire stuff.
Hey, wow, this happened here today. Wow, if you ever bump into just those conversations, 5, 10, 15-year-old kid. Okay.
Let me pause you there, because out of my own, this is on my own question, my own curiosity. I was not always a plugged in fireman. I was plugged in early, came from a volunteer department, got complacent, and then it reignited later. Longer story for later. But anyway, I'm kind of wondering for you, mm-hmm. Did you have a similar path, or once you got in? I'm not saying you don't have ups and downs. We all do. I'm talking about. Did you come in pretty reasonably plugged in and then pretty much maintain a reasonably plugged in attitude for the most part?
Yes.
Once again, I know that there's ups and downs but did you go like really complacent, or were you just kind of cruising up at the top for most of it?
For most of it, I never really reached that complacent moment. And there may be people that get pointed out and I'll be like, oh yeah, you got me there.
Yeah. You always, I guess I'm asking not to cut your thought off.
No.
It's you seem to go to conferences really reasonably early. You seem to stay at the NFA reasonably often. So I feel like if you did that within your first year, that there's not really a chance for complacency, because there's no way you're coming over to a place like Lyft and listening to the Corleys and the Robs. If you don't want to run through a wall after listening to Rob Ramirez speak, then you don't have there's something dead inside of you. So my point is, if you were already doing that it seems like you weren't really like, you know what, for the next 3 years we're checking out. It seems like you were. Would that be a fair assessment?
No,
that you were reasonably passionate about the job.
Passionate about the job
for your entire time.
And I had somebody ask me, I've never lost my passion for the job. Mm-hmm. Now, certain positions, those come and go, and like I say, Hillsboro always afforded. Literally, as chief officer of the department, highest ranking firefighter, we had an ice event a year or two ago, and generally it's just what's the expectation. So we kept as many of us came in as could come in, and just typical North Texas. It's either gonna happen or it's not. That night, okay, it got dicey. They've allowed me to stay a firefighter, and they expected me to do firefighter things. And so I do think, and I've thought about it every once in a while, if I would have left when I could have left over the years, and if that other fire department that wanted to put me back through all the schooling. Now, I definitely think about that now as I'm getting ready to retire. I'm like, man, I would have been, my pension would be this and not this. Man, would I have stayed as passionate if they didn't let me fight fire? If they didn't let me get dirty? If they didn't let me, fortunate, and I may be getting back into it, was a SWAT instructor for 3 years.
Maybe not. You're thinking maybe not. That if they would have put you in like an admin style role and not let you be connected.
Like when you hear Todd Edwards tell his story, like, why were you going to fires?
Yeah.
Because that's my job.
Yeah.
Whoa, no, don't, no, that.
I've mentioned this about 3 times, Chief, on this podcast. I'll keep mentioning it because I think it's a fun story. One of my favorite people in the fire department is a guy from my fire department, Chief Lonnie Spell. And I remember when he would sit at the AC desk. So he's our shift commander.
Yep.
And he would reminisce jokingly. He would kind of stare off into space and he'd go and have all his paperwork and all getting schedules, just all the nonsense of admin. He'd go, I used to ride on a fire truck. Yeah. Like it's in my organization, that is he's 2 ranks past riding on a fire truck and doing fire stuff. So it's like, to your point, the position, I don't want to say it sucks the passion out of you, but it's kind of nobody, I said this a million times, nobody joined the fire department to do scheduling.
Exactly.
No.
And there's a few adults out there that love it.
Sure.
The majority of us, when you talk about passion takes you back to that childlike state. What you want to do as a kid, and people said things, and firefighter, astronaut, play for the Yankees, whatever. And we get to do that. I joked with my oldest son. He's 19. He went with me up to see J-Lo at Oklahoma City, and he got to be in a little class. Because he asked me the same question. He's like, Dad, I've got to know. And I was like, okay, let's go. He'd already been accepted to college, music degree.
You said J-Lo.
Justin Lorenzen.
Oh, okay. So so is your son a fireman?
No.
Okay.
But he, he had come with me to an event in the city, and somebody had a medical emergency, sick or whatever, and he was close enough, and they were there helping, whatever, and those heartstrings, and he's like, and I helped her, man, Dad, my dad goes by Hank, that's his granddad name, Dad and Hank help people, huh? And so I told him, I said, hey, let's go. Let's drive up to Oklahoma City. They're doing, I think it was Spring Break Your Habits. Let's get you on a hose. You get to see some fire. You get some fresh water. And now it's funny, when he got out of the building, he did great. He was number 2 guy. So he's managing pinch points. And got to see them build some fire, and he liked that. And is that what you do? Yes, that's what I do. He's been with me to one other deal, a city northeast of us, closer to Dallas. I built some fires for them for a training thing they did, and he came one day, but he gets out of the building there in Oklahoma City, and he describes perfectly everything that happened: conversations, people, noises, and of course there's more people in the building than would ever be on a normal fire. I mean, with all the instructors and classes and whatever. And I kind of smile, and he's like, what are you going to make fun of me? Because, I forgot to tell you, my whole family's a bunch of wise asses too. And I was like, no, I'm not going to make fun of you. I said, buddy, your heart rate had to be here or at least under this. I said, buddy, I worked with people my whole career that bells drop. Couldn't even tell your name because
Stress
auditory and visual.
response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, let alone in the building or whatever we're actually going to do, we're having to shake people back to any bit of relevancy to help us on a call. I said, buddy, you okay? Cool. But I told him, I said, listen, bud, I said, unless there's an astronaut or a Navy SEAL or a Delta guy or something, you've now got the coolest story of anybody in your peer group.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Unless their dad flies helicopters or something, And I was like, well, there's a kid growing up, his dad worked for the state highway patrol. I'm like, why you got to show up, man? I was cool dude to you guys. But so yeah, so the relevance is relevant if it's real.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going up. Dave Mellon and I have not met at this point. We've simply talked on the phone. And he asked, he's doing live fire up in this place in Nebraska. I was like, I'm there. I take some hot sauce to Corley. Mm-hmm. We spend a little bit of time. I ate dinner with Sam Hiddle at his station there in Wichita. We talk about some hose load stuff, and there are some things there. I think they've got it sorted out now in Wichita, whatever they were doing. And about an hour or two outside of this little city in Nebraska, Mellon and I are talking. He's like, hey, got an instructor had a drop. This whole COVID thing might be real, whatever. Do you mind being inside building fires? I'm like, not at all. Mm-hmm. Exactly where I'd like to be, actually, because it's Nebraska. It's like 8 degrees. I'd rather be where the fire's at. And get to this little city. He's like, hey, I've had another instructor have to drop out. Mm-hmm. Do you feel comfortable with VES? Mm-hmm. Which part, Dave? Because I don't wake up every morning thinking about dragging people like Sean does, and some of the other guys, Kimura Grips, Todd Shepard and them. I don't wake up every day thinking about that. It's like, no. Sizing up the building, getting to and into the window, and then what to do in the room. I was like, that I got.
Sure.
That I've done. That's the world. Yeah, I'm comfortable. And I was real in that moment. And not that I was never not real before, but you go through this instructor phase. Crap, I've got to know. And that whole fake it till you make it. The speed, and I have this quote, Pete Holmes, he's a comedian. Knowing feels the same way as not knowing. Because information is so readily available today, there's no yearning to learn it and to find it. Your hardest part these days of the internet's slow. Mm-hmm. And people don't even know what slow is anymore.
No.
Because, it's lightning quick.
It's all instant, sure.
My dad's got a set of encyclopedias that I think MacArthur was still like a colonel or something. And that's what I wrote like senior papers out of,
Yeah.
And in high school.
Not in high school, but I do remember using an encyclopedia for paper. So we're not the same age, but we're in the same ballpark.
Heck yeah. And so I was real with them. And then, bumping into Sean, we were all at the same places. So it's a different. I've worked with enough people that are struggling with their passion mm-hmm. over the years. Now, that's always been frustrating. And that's the $1 million question. What do you do with the guy in the recliner? What do you do with the 24-hour fireman? He's there 30 seconds before. We actually had a guy that you would see his truck down the street waiting till, he would pull in as the 7 o'clock bells were chiming at the courthouse. And we're like, dude, come on. And his stuff was warmed up and ready to go, 6:59, 59, and we're like, crap. So some of the conference stuff, to be totally transparent, it's an addiction to be around people that want.
That's unbelievably true.
And it's a dangerous addiction because, man, the Corley's Mount Rushmore question and all these other people, hey, who would you this? Well, hell, I know exactly who I want coming for this, and this. I'm just going to have to wait. Torres is in Kentucky now, I think. I'm going to have to wait for Mikey to go to the roof with Kevin Lewis and Art Ashley and If you haven't met Sandy O'Malley, put him on the list. I've cut so many training holes with Sandy. I'm still shaking man glitter out of my stuff from the last one we were together, and hopefully we're together next week cutting holes. Of course, I want Basil and Rob and okay, hey, I mean how unbelievably sexy is the first word that came to mind, but I mean
Basil is sexy.
yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But there's no level of warmth if and I'm having to pick, and they're going to be mad that I'm picking, but if Mo Davis on the radio is telling Rob and Basil that, hey, y'all are going to assume this, that, and, hey, Art, take your crew to the roof. Okay, hey, yeah, shoot. Sean, you got search.
Right.
And I'm like,
it's the all-star game of the fire service.
absolutely.
And to be around it, like you said, it's addicting to just be in the same room. Dangerously so. We talk about family all the time on this. I say on this podcast, it gets talked about all the time on podcasts. Preston Lyons starts all of his podcasts with family. And I'm away from my family right now on my own time.
Same.
You are away from your family. But yes, I like that you. I hate that you say it, but it is the truth. Unfortunately, if you are, and it's just my opinion, if you are not finding, it's impossible to find that level in your own department. You just can't. You can't put together a roof team, a RIT team, a search team, a hose team that is expert level within your own place. And then when these types of things happen, you're like, man, it's in the same place. They may not all be together, but you get to go experience the all-star team. You get to go listen to the all-star team. And for me, it's I'm not saying anything new. It kind of fills the cup. It's like it recharges the batteries. It's
100%. And it just
could be dangerous. Yeah.
I get the same feeling, and I was so lucky as a kid when you walk in the station and you can smell fire.
Mm-hmm.
Not hay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not Sterilite or whatever we're cleaning the medic with. It's fire.
Yeah. You put your gear on the truck, and and when you open it up, you go, "Oh, somebody went to work."
There's hose laid out on the back pad, getting whatever, there's still a stack of SCBAs, by the fill station, it. And so when people started asking me things, because as you can tell, as we keep this conversation going, I love to talk about this, and there's so many things. It was a little bit before my time, but there was a cartoon called Felix the Cat. And I saw the episodes. Felix had everything in his bag of tricks. Mm-hmm. And he would pull it out and solve the problem. And then, Dora the Explorer and Special Agent Oso, my boys' stuff, they would had all these answers. My dad and his counterparts, his peers, took the time every time. And he made that statement. One of his captains passed away several years ago. One of the longest serving captains in Arlington. Never missed an opportunity to train when they were out and about and on calls, and just to stop real quick and point something out. And his knowledge of the city was just phenomenal. And he'd been there so long, he saw things change and alter, and he attracted those level of people that knew, okay, we're going to get this. And as I rode out with them over the years, I still believe that the individuals that I work with can do it. Mm-hmm. I've made the statement in the last couple of years, and this is a totally different podcast. I found it incredibly difficult to say the word career anymore. Mm-hmm. It's simply what they're doing right now till they press reset. Mm-hmm. Now, that doesn't change my want to pour into them answers and knowledge. I don't want anybody that I bump into to bump into something that I could have given them at least a partial answer or solution. I'm not great with knots, but man, I love all the different ways to do the knots. Okay, man, one of those is going to stick with somebody. I can still tie my figure eight on a bite. My figure eight family in the dark with gloves on. Great, I'm good to go. Do my bowling. And so as people started asking things, or people started seeing things, and then my background in music, my background in education, background in evaluating, okay, that person knows the answer. We're not asking the question the right way. Mm-hmm. That person can get to the roof. They're just going to have to throw a 16 twice. Mm-hmm. So certain people's frames, and not that they can't throw a 24 or a 28, but you know what? And now if it needs a 28, it needs a 28, don't get me wrong. But on a single family structure, you can throw a 14 and then pull it up on the roof with you and spread your gap. Your spans. Okay, let's just show them how to do that. Well, I mean, the skill sheet clearly says it has to be a 24 foot. Well, I mean, the skill sheet, I've never put out a fire with the state skill sheet. Create a few.
That might be the quote right there.
I mean, it hasn't happened, but we still keep cramming that down people's throats. The money making end of our business. Okay, and that's why I'm so thankful. I mean, the book of Search and Art's new book that came out, Chief Lieb and Goldfitter, 30 Fires You Must Know.
Yeah.
That's what it should be called, not should know. 30 Fires You Should Know. You must know what happened in Keokuk. You must know what happened in these other places. And I'm so thankful. They've got about another 40, 50 fires. They're going to do maybe another 2 or 3 books.
Yeah. You bought your book of Search today or no?
I did not.
Yeah. Rob could have signed it, man.
I know.
You could have started collecting the signatures.
I was thinking about that as I got in the car.
Hey, wait, I'm going to derail you right here.
Yeah.
I could be wrong about this.
Yeah.
Were you involved in the drill section? Did you jump into that process?
I don't think so. No.
Okay, no, you would have known.
Okay.
There was a name. I don't.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, we're not gonna. No, you would have known. No, there's another name in there that was heavily involved. We're not gonna derail on that.
No. It's so fantastic, and what's awesome about this stuff finally being written, and Chief Thompson, I think, is the one who said it. It's going to be used now, like court of law used. They're going to come and say, "Hang on, you were given answers." Because our books out there right now, and we're not going to name all those lists of.
Of course not.
They're being used against us as the answer, because that's how they build themselves. Mm-hmm. So happy. No, these are answers. Mm-hmm. There's 20, 30 different ways to do this, and all counterbalanced with the fact that you can't search for people inside fires without being inside fires.
There's man, we have been going for an hour and 30 minutes recording.
Okay.
No. I'm not stopping you, but I know that I have to stop you at some point because you have to teach.
Yeah. One, I've got to go in there and make up this lecture.
But just kidding. This rabbit hole is that rabbit hole that I think we're going through a transitional period within the fire service.
Absolutely.
Where it was the book way. For it was cowboy ways. It was the cowboy way for a long time, 60s, 70s, into the 80s, and then at some point in the 90s. And it's just my opinion. I could be off on the dates, but it transitioned to a more formalized. We got formalized. Everybody's kind of going through the same thing. Safety it took over, and so it was a cowboy way, and then it swung, I think, too far over. The pendulum went a little too far one way to safety, and now I think you're starting to see a swing back, not to unsafe in my opinion, but to better. I think we're swinging back into. We are, and here's how to safely pull people out that is not way over here in this unrealistic box of what's going on. But like I said, I wanted to mention it, but
absolutely,
that's another hour and a half.
Well, the safest
I don't want
way
to derail it too bad.
The safest way to do our job is be knowledgeable.
Yes, 100%.
And realize that we're performance based, and then throw this in there. We can't keep secret what we do. Mm-hmm. And I have the conversation about rebranding the fire service. We let it get out that we could answer everybody's problems. And we never intended to do that. We took on EMS. Well, we could answer everybody's problems if it meant breaking their stuff and putting the fire out, looking good doing it, a good thick mustache, got that leather cock to the side. We got an EMS, whether we should have, shouldn't have. Do I think we had the talent level to do it? Absolutely.
Sure.
Do I think we thought it was going to become predominantly what we do? No. And because our customer base lost the ability to take care of themselves, and we're now talking just a whole global swarm of politics at this point.
Sure.
I've met very few people in 23 years of being an EMT and a paramedic. I just got my national registry thing last year for being medic for 20 years. Very few people that had called 911 for an EMS call that what they really needed was to know that they were experiencing life. And
That's true. I'll give you one quick example. We went to a call, and it wasn't an EMS call, but it was my oven sparked.
yeah,
It sparked, and we're showing up on a truck with four killers,
absolutely.
ready to just do whatever. But really, there was no fire, and you could have just unplugged. This is like a basic life skill.
Absolutely.
And that is not an emergency. We know it's not, but we're going to show up. And like you said, your people are just experiencing life. And now in this world, life requires a fire truck.
It requires an
Or an
expectation of
ambulance.
service, an ambulance or a police officer or our utilities people. In The Bronx is Burning, the Dennis Smith documentary where they reference it even then. And this was in the early 70s, late 60s. You may wait for this, you may wait for that. You twist that alarm box, you're getting a fire truck.
Mm-hmm.
And the most comforting thing, and in the poets, the greatest thing humanity has ever produced is a fire truck. And when you see that truck pull up, you see that collective sigh.
Somebody's going to fix my problems.
Until we get out.
Uh-oh.
And here's a whole nother deal. I mean, I'll tell Stephanie, I've got nowhere to really be until Monday morning, And that's back to one of the reasons I like going to this stuff. One of the reasons I like challenging my guys and gals. And I intentionally don't put any videos in my classes that show us doing bad.
Sure, no doubt.
And in part because I'm not really good at putting videos in my slideshows, but if the internet works, I got a few pulled up on the internet of people doing stuff. But when they see us do boneheaded stuff, when they see the firefighter that was selfieing or Snapchatting or whatever in the front yard as the lady is on the phone with 911, she is 10 feet inside the kitchen, you're not getting burned up on this fire. And they stay there. When you see the video of the guy pointing, he's in that window right there, the only window without fire, and he's in that one right there. And sure enough, they found the body right there.
Yeah.
When they see us get off going, well, shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
My 17-year-old son, he was probably 15 at the time, called me on the carpet 2 years ago. So for 38 years, my dad got to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a little period in there where he was transitioning and doing some stuff, did some things he didn't want to do, got back on a fire truck, great. Colson called me out on it. He's like, hey, you're not making this job look like the happiness you keep telling people. I was like,
ooh, that hurts.
It did. Oh, it crushed me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because, man, I live this last position I took, emergency management and innovations. Chief? And he's like, why would you not go to fires? I'm like, okay. Still got all my fire stuff, a little bit of EMS stuff, SWAT stuff, everything. He's like, go to the calls you're supposed to go to. I'm like, okay. Whew. I thought this was going to be a desk job.
Yeah.
Last people that had the position, they didn't savvy the, that, and I was like, okay, no, I want to be in burning buildings. I crave, it's a hunger. And so when you get to be around those people, and when you get to be around people that want it, just don't understand it. Okay, well, let's show you a few things. Back into the instructional side, I've been able to be a part of a lot of neat things that we've been able to push some boundaries. Did a burn. If y'all keep up with, very few people see me at the burns. I get some credit every once in a while now, or that I was at places. I've been a part of 3 hen nozzle burns in the last year and a half.
Okay.
And good buddy of mine, Ian Bennett out of Seattle Fire, has managed those 3. And Ian made the statement, and he makes a statement. I make the same statement. You're not students today. You're experts of your craft. Act like that. Act like the masters of the craft that you are. And then we'll sort out the fire. We're going to light fires for this objective. We want to see you perform. We're not teaching you how to be pipemen and be heelmen and this, that, and the other. When we say go, go. Fantastic. And it's nice to be around all the levels, because that new firefighter smell is the greatest thing on earth. Young man in our church just got his first fire job, and I talked to him for like 2 hours. I missed all of church talking to him about, okay, look for this, this, and this, and when you get to here, and here, and this was when he was still in Fire Academy. Man, that new firefighter smell, man, give me that all day long, because they want it.
My last podcast was with Captain Reagan Underwood.
Yeah.
And we talked about that briefly, where teaching firemen. Not only is it your job as an officer, I enjoy it. I truly enjoy it, and the guys around me know that. But the recruits is just a different level of excitement, because I can only give, like, Chief, I could probably teach you 1 or 2 things that maybe you've never heard, but the realistic portion of it, you have such a high level of stuff. It would be very difficult if I just blob for the next 3 hours. I'm probably going to give you 2 minutes of something maybe you haven't heard. But with a recruit, if you blob for 3 hours, they might not have heard 2 hours and 50 minutes of it. So you feel like your words are more valuable to a recruit.
Oh yeah,
because there's so little in the jar, and you can fill the jar pretty quickly, which is exciting. So when you say, new recruit smell, I also share that same.
Absolutely.
I share that same thing.
And so back to the conference stuff, it is such an exciting time. I have a friend, remain nameless, been in his class several times over the past decade. He's got about 5 slides in his class that the information's almost 20 years old. And he apologizes for the information. Now, he gives you the correct information. He's up to date. And he gives you whatever, but I'm lost in that slide with the wrong info. And it's like drastically wrong now. I mean, 20 years later, he's had it in this class for 10 years. And we've told him several times, like, hey, we can change that right now at lunch. I mean, we can change your slide. No, I don't want to mess anything up. Oh my gosh, I've had this PowerPoint, this before it was even called PowerPoint. I'm like, crap, man. Yeah. What's so exciting, and you're exactly right. And hey, don't sell it. When I was new on the job, if it didn't save me minutes, and I caught myself doing the same thing that guy did to the back of my coat. What's that going to teach me? Mm-hmm. We don't have garden style apartments here. Okay, it's not the garden style apartment. It's the VES search they're doing. Oh, almost all my window initiated searches have been first level. Majority of our fires are in single family, single story. Okay, great. I've dove in quite a few windows. Have I done it 2-story? It hasn't presented itself. Do I totally understand it? Have I done it a million times in training and teaching? Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Is the first floor the same as the second floor? 100%. I was about to drift down a real big one. But
you cannot postpone your class.
Exactly.
You're gonna have
Hey, everybody, we're staying. Um, I'm in the precious metals business these days. What I love about coming to conferences is I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that Rob Ramirez updated and added in current information to the presentation he gave this morning.
yeah.
Took the time. I've seen Mo and Todd Edwards and Chief Ike and all these guys that don't have to do a thing because you've already got us. We're going to be there. Tell us anything. We're going to be there. No. I'm going to make sure this is relevant. This information. I watched Steve Robertson. We were presenting together in Oklahoma last year. Changed his slides at lunch to input something that Jeff Luce. I had seen the video. Jeff actually had it, knew how to send it to him. Sent him the video. He put it in the presentation that he was given in 10 minutes.
Can I toot my own horn right here?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so I got an opportunity to teach at Small Town Job Town,
Nice.
filling in for Rob, Sam, Chief Sparacello. I was going over there volunteer just to be, mop floors, clean
Yep.
toilets. It didn't matter. I wanted to be there,
Yep.
right, to help. I wanted to help make the thing go, and so I got to swap in. But to your point, I was fixing to teach this little search thing, and a buddy of mine texted me. We were talking about, how 3% of 3% of your band instructors, when they say everybody's out of the building, we actually find somebody in the building. It was part of that deal. And he sent me a grab that was made where people said everyone was out. 3 girls came out and said there's nobody else in there, and they find a guy in the basement. He texted me that, and I was going on in like an hour.
Nice.
Screenshot it, drug it in, put it behind that. So when I said the 3%, I was like, do you want a recent example of this? And then you hit the next slide, and it's like, this happened yesterday as an impactful moment. Now, well, I have no idea if I'll ever teach again, but my point is, I find a lot of value, and I'm glad that guys that have been in the game a long time, that, like I say, we're coming to see them regardless. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Still take the time to say, our slides are important to keep up to date, so that we're not teaching old and bad information.
Yep.
We want to be a professional on the fire ground, be a pro. They want to be a pro at their level, which is teaching. For
Absolutely.
Most of them.
And it's been different. Like today is 2 wildly different presentations. Everything's a fire. I caught myself, we're an ambulance company that goes to fires. And now, and that was, I created that person within me, and I've heard other people say it. I mean, it realistic. But I found myself at the same time, every time the bells, we'd get a pre-alert or whatever, I'm like, fire, fire, fire. There for a while, I'm not going to lie, I would say our nursing home in town. And my partner was like, why are you saying that? I'm like, at least so I'm right.
I'm tired of being wrong.
Yeah,
I need a win. I need a win.
We need you to go out to whatever. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, but I started looking at that stuff. Everything's a fire. So it's a series of conversations. And if you've seen some of the other things I've done, I work it into everything a little bit because we're at this crippling stage again of the fire service. We've got some people that are taking off and departments that are, I'll say it, aggressively adopting the standard we already had. Go in, save lives, save property, reduce the risk.
Yeah.
And
I already know the colony's on your mind. I already know it.
Oh, well, the colony, and then there's several other.
Yeah, they got a few. They got a bunch. Sure.
And then there's places out there that are so lost in the minutia of everything else we've added. It's his story to tell. Todd Edwards talks about the line of duty death they had years ago. And when they went and looked at this young man's training that Atlanta had given him, it was like 48 hours worth of car seat training in there.
Wow.
He got caught up in a flashover and lost in a flash. Hang on, what are we doing? Our FTOs, they can't be a housekeeping FTO. Yes, know how to mop the floor, know how to this. Yes, I'm going to get my ass chewed for the front. There being handprints all over the front door. Yeah, really nobody walked in the front door today to wipe that with a thing of Windex. How awesome would it be? And now to say that, it's one of the slides I got to add in. Is what Chief's got on the back of the door of their station. I got to find it. I've got it as a picture someplace. I may call him and say, send it to me real quick. Chief, if you're listening, 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks from now, send it. Yeah, he'll get it on the next class. But
when I meet you at the back pad, when you come onto our department, period, we're fire first. Mm-hmm. We are going to help you. And you can be fire first as an EMS organization. You can be fire first in prevention. You can be fire first at your pub eds. Mm-hmm. We show them the life pack at the pub ed, and every once in a while, if I've had too many monsters and I'm skipping along, non-perfusing beats, will even hook me up over the years. Our conversation should be fire first. Mm-hmm. Because people have a choice. There are civilians out there making grabs.
Yeah.
And civilians out there saving property, and civilians out there stopping the bad guy and putting direct pressure on wounds. I think it's Court. Corley references this every once in a while. I think it's Court. If it's not Court, sorry. They give us the gear that people don't get, mm-hmm. to go to the places that people don't go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I said earlier, when we check up in the front yard, when that big red truck shows up, that sigh of relief needs to be immediate action. I want them to say, wow, we didn't realize y'all did all of that. Oh, yeah, we did that.
We do it.
We do this. This is why we showed up. We didn't show up because it's Super Bowl Sunday and we know, Chris's wife's bringing that cool fun dip, whatever, this, that, and the other. I remember my dad telling me one time, I asked him why they don't eat more fish. And he's like, you ever come back to 6-hour-old fish? And I'm like, okay, yeah, the little chicken fish, the little nugget fish, okay, that'll reheat.
Yeah.
The nice salmon dinner, no, probably not.
No, it won't be any good.
But he kept himself at stations that were working. Mm-hmm. And they may miss something because of training. They may miss something because they took those extra few minutes. And so it's about, everything's a fire is about seizing those opportunities and building them into your life. But anyways, let's keep going. Yeah, because you're all right. Yeah.
Yeah. You're going to run through your own lunch here if you don't.
Yeah.
So we're gonna have to have you back at some point. Let's tie it up. So there's so many things. There's things in my head that I want to talk to you about that we didn't even cover, and the biggest one maybe is the importance of training and training like a pro. I'm not sending you down that rabbit hole because we will never leave this.
We will never leave. They can just walk through, and this will be the class.
I'll give you the short version for Chief here, which is, like I said, when he called me, he went on a strong tangent just on the phone with me. About the importance of training and staying ready and staying proficient. And it was a long and passionate speech. But if I send him down there, we're never leaving, which I'm fine with, but it will not be good for the rest of the conference.
Exactly. There's at least 2 people showing up to this.
They're going to be, and you know what? Those 2 people wanted to see you.
I hope so.
We don't want to disappoint them. So what we're gonna tie it up. I asked 2 questions to most of the guests, and there are things that are important to me, and that is we're going to start with mentors. I think that's vitally important. It's something I've kind of taken a passion on later in my career. Who do you have any? Just maybe 1 or 2. If you got 50, let's Chief, we're gonna need you to tighten it down a little bit.
Exactly.
But give me a couple of people. And when I say mentor, it's not just people that kind of showed you stuff. I really like pick a guy or 2 that was vested almost passionately vested in making sure that you were successful. That's really what I'm talking about.
Absolutely. So my dad, obviously,
Bam. Easy answer right there.
the easiest. And then, and I was thinking about this, and this will be the shortest of all the answers I give, because I'm intentionally not going to give a name.
Okay.
If they listen to this and they're like, he was talking about me, and I'm like, yes, I am.
Will they know?
No.
Uh-oh.
One of them might.
Okay.
Tormentors.
Okay. Isn't that some Harry Potter stuff?
That's some Harry Potter.
Okay.
And so
That's a Dementor. No, Dementor.
Dementors, yeah, but
Tormentor. Go ahead.
So to be tormented,
Sure.
I've had a couple of people in my career and in my life that, some because of my actions and some just because we were different people from each other, they just did not care for me at all. And maybe a couple of them approaching a hatred. I hate to put that word in them but I've had a couple of people in my career that just disliked me. I mean, when we just couldn't even be in the same room together type stuff.
I've got a few.
But they invested their time. One of them pulled me aside one day and he told me, he's like, I didn't realize you could love the job as much as I do, just completely different. And I was like, wow. And it took me a couple more years for that to lay in. One of them pulled me aside one day and just told me how much I sucked. We were at the station together, and it was literally 24 hours of trying to avoid every second he saw me. We actually ran calls that shift of him just letting me know, not that I was a failure, but just how much I sucked because of just the ways I was. And I look back now, they gave me their time. They can't take that back. There's no machine that will allow them to give back the conversations. And some of them actually probably wanted my failure, but some of them were telling me because I created such a visceral response in them, they didn't know how to react other than just to throw up on me their dislike. How I mowed the yard that day, what I said on the radio. I'm like, sorry. I had one guy, I pulled him aside. There's an instructor I actually had who actually worked on the job the same time my dad did. And I went home and asked my dad, I was like, hey, so-and-so? And he's like, stupid looking guy? I'm like, that explains so much. I pulled this guy aside a couple of weeks later, it was in a class, it was in a several month-long class. I said, listen, whatever grief you have against my dad, you're going to have to squash it. I'm not him. And we didn't develop any fantastic relationship, but he at least took the time from then on to let me know where I was screwing up. I'm like, hey, can I get better? Mm-hmm. And so those tormentors in my life, I've gotten as much out of them. And I'm actually sad now that the people I've turned off that have that initial kind of, well, you said the same thing with Sam. Your initial impression, how many people just see it? That's one of the reasons, like back with Chief. Oh, he's a chief. I can't go to him. That guy looks like a normal dude over there. Just wearing gear, just whatever, just failing at the same task we're failing at. Yeah, come on over. Welcome to just the normal person club.
Yep.
How many people have turned me off and I never got to hear what they valued or devalued to try and reconstruct who I am? I mean, this is an ongoing process. Mm-hmm. One of your guys said that. I mean, it's one of the last comments my dad made before he retired. People think I was born this old. No, I got here. This is 23 years. This is 52 plus years of watching this game that I occasionally get to play now.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So
anyways. Your dad
dad
and the people that maybe didn't like you very
Yep.
much, to you're learning, you can learn from them.
Yep, man, they
One of my
shaped me.
very first podcasts was with one of them was Chief Gerard Saunier, and he said something very similar. He said, I didn't have a mentor, but he goes, I used through the learning process, I used the guys that weren't doing that well, like the guys that were
Yep.
bad as something, as mentors, and so that you can, I say bad, I'm using it as a generic.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You're kind of going the same way. Those people definitely weren't coaching you through life, but their interactions with you were vital enough to form who you are today.
Yep.
Yeah. No, good answer.
Awesome.
The second one is if you were to have to go back and talk to a rookie / recruit, David Pruitt, it's got to be short. And I know,
Oh, yeah.
you're not good at short, Chief. Is you're grabbing him
Yep.
and you're giving him something before he walks into his first station assignment that will help, that you think will help his career before
Absolutely.
you got all this experience now, right? 23 years in, you've seen a lot, done a lot, moved around a lot, and you're coming back and you're saying, here's the piece of advice that I think can make your career better. What are you giving him?
So I've actually thought about this one. This one's very short. 3 things. First and foremost, the people that aren't laughing are important to you. I always tried to be the funny guy. Still try to be the funny guy. But there were people that weren't laughing, that in that last category, that probably wrote me off because I was just trying to be a jackass and play a prank or do a something, whatever. Take the pictures. Got a lot of pictures, but I don't have a lot of pictures. And then I wish every single tour I would have kept a journal.
God.
And I mean, there's been so many neat things that are now relegated to
Memory.
trying to remember.
Yeah, take the. I love all 3 of those. I love all 3 of those. I'll just to support you in those. Some of the guys I was very much, and still am, I like to clown around a lot, and there were so many guys that were very serious that weren't my cup of tea, but they were really good at the job.
Yep.
And I didn't associate. I wrote them off very early on in my career. And I invited one of those guys onto the podcast. He said he would come on. It's Chris Duplichin. So Chris, if you're listening, I know you won't. You said you'd come on. I'd like you to come on. But Chris was one of those super serious, straight laced guys that had a lot to offer. Very serious about the job. And because we had a different personality, we didn't connect probably like we should have. And I know now those conversations 17 years later, it'd be very different conversations.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I would have been able to gather so much from him, and I missed it. That's all that there was to it. Take the pictures, of course. Nowadays it's a little easier,
yeah.
right? Cell phones. You got our department culturally is not a big picture department, but man, how cool to look back on. I wish I would have my, first, second, third fire. And then the journaling, I tried. David, I tried, and it got to the point, and I know that you probably have the same feeling. I was trying to document every call when I first grade out, and it was like CO nothing, CO alarm nothing, EMS nothing, car wreck. We didn't really do anything, and it got to be so tedious that I gave up. And now looking back, I probably should have said, okay, if something would have happened that was worth documenting. But I gave up. It burned me out, and I didn't document anything from that point. But I completely agree with you. Chief, we did not touch on about 1,000 things that I know were flying through your brain, but let's
do it again.
You have to go eat at some point. You have to go eat, and then you have to teach.
Finish this presentation. I'm sure Kyle and Lyft would enjoy that.
We'll try to get you back on and try to finish up. I'll rewatch this one and I'll take notes.
Yeah,
and then we'll say, okay, what did we miss?
Didn't talk about,
what did we miss? We'll catch that on the backside. So, Dave, I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
You stopped editing PowerPoints in order to come in here when you're literally fixing to teach here in the next not too long, to have a good conversation. And I very, very much appreciate your time.
Absolutely, brother. Absolutely.
Thank y'all for watching the next episode of the Dragons Den podcast. And we appreciate your time. So thank y'all.